Sit back, strap in, and get ready for After Hours with TC Restani. This is Abigail Harwich, executive producer, welcoming you to the show. And now, TC Restani!
Alrighty there, welcome to the After Hours of TC Restani, the podcast. I'm TC Restani, emanating from the palatial podcast penthouse here at Restani Productions, and we have an unbelievable big episode tonight. We have a celebrity interview that my mentor, Mr. Ricky Bittman, conducted earlier this evening with one of the greatest Hollywood legends of all time, Mr. Eddie Deezen.
My feet, they still haven't touched the ground, CC. I don't know what to tell you.
You are higher than a kite right now.
Everything I learned from you. Let me just say that. I'm still like, the vapors have still got me up there.
Now, if you listen to this podcast, I do a lot of celebrity interviews on here, but I knew my mentor, Mr. Ricky Bittman, is a lifelong fan of Eddie Deezen.
Yep.
And you two are probably two of the biggest Beatles fans in the history of Beatlemania.
Telling you, yep.
And I said, you know what? Your birthday just happened. And I said, this is my birthday gift to you, to interview this legend.
I couldn't have asked for a better gift from my associates and my peers, TC and Quincy.
And
Thank you for allowing me to do this.
And I'm telling you, this interview is off the charts.
Oh, come on.
You stumped him on Beatle trivia,
I did.
and he even admitted no one has ever done that.
Yeah, a couple of things. I took him by surprise on his own movie.
I mean, this guy is a legend. This guy was in I Want to Hold Your Hand, which was Robert Zemeckis' first movie, the guy who directed the Back to the Future trilogy.
One of the best there is.
Forrest Gump and whatever, and a million other things. And he was in War Games, and we find out that he wasn't directed by the original director, John Badham.
I watched your eyes. Your eyes will lighten up when you got little
Right, because I never knew that.
And to stump you is even bigger than to stump Eddie Deezen.
And we got to have some of our viewer listeners ask questions on there via internet, email questions, of course.
Yep.
And it was just a fascinating interview. I learned more about the Beatles in that interview than I had ever on watching any of those Peter Jackson documentaries.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but, we were both two very passionate Beatle fans.
You could tell.
And we just love the Beatles on so many levels, and we experienced them at different times in our lives. He's got a few years on me, but, I wasn't even born when they came to town. He was about 6 or 7, and it was very exciting. Like I said, I'm still high over
and his encounters that he's going to talk about where he actually gets to meet the Beatles.
I mean, he's touched a Beatle.
He's touched a Beatle.
He's walked next to a Beatle while he was dressed as Santa Claus.
One of them actually ran over his foot.
Over his foot, his precious little toe.
And it's unbelievable. And it's fascinating. Also joining me on this podcast as well, my other co-host, the milkman himself, Quincy Briscoe.
And how you doing tonight?
We're doing fantastic. Now,
awesome.
You're a big fan of the movie Grease, correct, Quincy?
That's right. Grease is the word. That, this guy was in a lot of things. Grease, The Facts of Life.
You name it. Eddie Deezen has his fingerprints on it.
I guess, if you don't mind my asking, what did they do in The Facts of Life?
He probably just was on a guest star on the episode. That show was on for like 11 years. So
11 years, and then of all people, and of all ones to meet in the cast of The Facts of Life, and what's your favorite role? He did a lot of everything, I guess.
Well, my favorite was his movie, I Want to Hold Your Hand, about the Beatles.
The Beatles, that's priceless. You cannot... That's kind of tough to beat.
Yeah.
I want to hold your hand. I want to hold your hand. A Hard Day's Night. How did he get to be with the Beatles?
Well, you'll have to find out when you re-listen to the interview.
You listen to the interview I did, all your questions will be answered. And maybe, if we're lucky, and Eddie would entertain it for one more time, maybe we could talk to him about his TV shows appearances. We love television.
And in fact, I think we need to bring him up here into the podcast penthouse studio.
Live up here, I think
that would be fantastic.
And we'll take him out to dinner and everything.
And our late co-host, South Boston Jeff, would have loved the fact that he got tickets to see Paul McCartney on The Tonight Show from George Gaines, Commandant Eric Lassard from Police Academy.
Jeff would have just spilled over in his chair. I mean, it's just unfair.
So without any further ado, let's go down to the interviewer, Ricky Bittman and Eddie Deezen.
Our guest has appeared in over 40 motion pictures, including Grease, I Want to Hold Your Hand, 1941, Midnight Madness, Grease 2, Zapped, War Games, Sesame Street Presents Follow That Bird, Spy Hard, The Polar Express, and the SpongeBob movie SpongeBob Out of Water. He's appeared on over 30 TV shows such as The Facts of Life, Magnum P.I., Punky Brewster, Dexter's Laboratory, Life with Louie, The Weird Al Show, Johnny Bravo, and the Transformers Robots in Disguise. He is a world-renowned and self-confessed Beatles nut, and he's read well over 1,000 books on the Fab Four. At one time, his official website featured a very difficult Beatles trivia quiz with a $100 prize for anyone who could answer all the questions correctly. No one ever managed to claim that prize. He's appeared on an episode of The Gong Show in the mid-1970s, only to be gonged by a friend of the After Hours podcast, singer-songwriter Mr. Paul Williams. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my esteemed pleasure to welcome to the After Hours podcast one of my comedy idols, Mr. Eddie Deezen.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. It's an honor to be on your show, and I look forward to this podcast.
Eddie, does that gong from Paul Williams still sting by any chance?
No, not at all. It was a lark. I got gonged. It was a bit of a shock because I was down to 2 jokes. That was my TV debut. It was, and by the way, they're looking for it now. They just found like 500 new Gong Show tapes. I'm PMing the guy back and forth. He's really trying to find my episode. This is my, Jerry Lewis, The Day the Clown Cried, that I have never, it's my lost work, and I want to see it. It's my first time on camera. It was year before I did Grease. I was 19, and I really want to see it. I had 2 jokes left. But anyway, the upshot is, okay, Jamie Farr was on the panel. I later worked with him in a movie called Happy Hour. He's a great guy. J.P. Morgan was on the panel and Paul Williams. Now, I met Mr. Williams. He gonged me, and then I went off. Okay. Then I met Mr. Williams like 40 years later. I'm going downstairs. It was at L.A. Studios. I wanted to do a radio voiceover. Who's sitting there in the lobby? Paul Williams. So I go, Mr. Williams, hi, I'm Eddie Deezen. I go, you probably don't remember. You gonged me on the Gong Show. It was my TV debut. He goes, Eddie, please forgive me. I go, what? He goes, please forgive me. He's deadly serious. It's like his mother's funeral. He's deadly serious. Mr. Williams, Eddie, please tell me you forgive me. I go, Mr. Williams, of course it was a lark. I didn't take it seriously. Of course I forgive you. Don't worry about it. He goes, you don't understand. He goes, I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. He goes, we have to get the forgiveness of anybody we may have hurt in our lives.
Oh,
so
wow.
He said, I was probably drunk when I did that. He said, and I want to make sure you forgive me. And of course I absolved him. He was a very sweet guy. But that was a very serious moment for him. I could see how important it was to him.
Wow, well, that is a very serious thing, the 12 steps. They have to take that very seriously. Well, you got an apology from Paul Williams. You got a gong and an apology. That's huge.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I got to tell you, Eddie, I'm glad you answered the phone because this has not been a good week for celebrities. Am I right?
Yes, they're going. It's sad. Now, none of them really had a huge impact on me. Hulk Hogan, I was never into wrestling.
Yep.
I thought he was great in Rocky 3. That's what I know him the most. Rocky 3, I thought he was great in his scene, So he was good. Was it Rocky 3 or Rocky 2?
He was in Rocky 3. You had it right the first
Rocky
time.
3, yeah. That's the one time I liked him, but he wasn't a real part of my life. Ozzy was not a part of my life, even though, I have nothing against them. But
Sure.
It wasn't my kind of music, and he wasn't one of my favorites. And who was the third one? There was a third celebrity.
There was Malcolm Jamal Warner from The Cosby Show.
Malcolm, okay. Now, I did meet him. I did a show with him. Incredibly sweet guy. Totally nice guy.
Yeah.
I went over to his table. We kibitzed a little bit and all, but he was just a very warm, good-hearted guy. So that was, he wasn't a big part of my life. I only met him that one day. I never saw The Cosby Show. I never got caught up in it. For me, Bill Cosby was I Spy. I loved him on I Spy.
Sure.
And I bought his albums when I was a young kid. I loved his albums.
My brother Russell.
But I met him, and he was just a very sweet, warm, genuine guy. He was a total gentleman.
And
that was a loss for me.
They say it happens
I wish him well.
They say it happens in threes, but we had a fourth was Chuck Mangione. He kind of flew under the radar.
Chuck Mangione, yes, another one. Not a big effect on my life. I'm sure he was a wonderful guy, but not a big effect on my life.
But the funny thing about Ozzy is Ozzy was a huge Beatles fan as well. And he often said
he was friends with Paul.
There would have been no Ozzy if there were no Beatles.
Right, exactly.
And
know anybody if there wasn't Beatles, pretty much.
Speaking of the Beatles, you got a big festival coming up in the first week of August. This is the Fest for Beatle fans. It's in Chicago. It's the original and longest running Beatles celebration since 1974. How'd you get involved with this?
Yes, okay. I used to go as a fan. I'm the world's biggest Beatles nut, as you said. I'm a huge Beatles fan. I've read, by the way, not to contradict you, it was a beautiful introduction. I think I've read over 1,000 books on the Beatles, counting individual stuff.
Wow.
poetry books, all
Well, you're
kinds of
busy.
books, but Beatles related books. I ordered another one today. I found another obscure one. I ordered from overseas. Any new Beatles book and any Beatles magazine. I've read probably thousands and thousands of interviews, everything on them, But I used to go as a fan because I was a Beatles fan. And I went to, not the first one, but when I went to LA, I went to one in like 77, 78. And then I started going, we would go every year. And then they stopped having them in LA. They moved them to New Jersey. And then I started appearing in them. They would fly me to New Jersey and I would appear. In fact, I was at the last one in New Jersey several months ago. Denise and I, my assistant Denise, and Denise will be with me in the Chicago show. We'll be there the 8th, 9th, and 10th in Chicago. And this is the mecca for Beatles fans around the world. It's great if you're a Beatles fan. And they will be screening my movie, I Want to Hold Your Hand, and I will be doing a Q&A with the audience afterwards. And Ricky, I hope you can be there.
I'm going to do my best to get there. Now, this is a pretty big event. This is at the Hyatt Regency O'Hare in Rosemont, Illinois.
Imagine all the Beatles fans in the world congregate here. We all come together. This is our, Fred and Barney Rubble, Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble at the Water Buffalo Lodge. This is the big one, where they had the Rockettes or whatever. But this is our big event. And we all, we talk, we buy Beatles stuff and all. We kibitz, trivia contests, and, listen to Beatles music, watch Beatles films, interviews. We're insatiable, And, they usually find something new. There's always something new that comes up with the Beatles. So hopefully that too, because I've seen pretty much everything, but there's always something new.
Well, I want to let
YouTube and they'll find this old obscure thing,
I just want to let all your fans out there know that are listening to this, because this will drop before the festival, and you can find out more information at thefest.com. And in addition to Eddie himself, we've got Peter Asher from Peter and Gordon, Billy J. Kramer, who was with Billy J. Kramer in the Dakotas. They recorded Bad to Me, with Lennon and McCartney song. Jenny Boyd, George Harrison's sister-in-law. Susan Ryan, she's a Beatles historian. By the way, Eddie, I looked on the website. She could be your twin sister.
Seriously.
See?
Oh, God, for her. I feel sorry for her.
No.
She probably had a lot of lonely Saturday nights.
You're both beautiful people. Simon Kirk, he was a founding member of Bad Company. And Chris O'Dell, this one's interesting. He worked at Apple, and he was present for the Let It Be rooftop concert.
He wrote a great book.
Yeah, that's really something. I mean, this is
fun. It's always fun. It's Carol and Mark Lapidos. They're a wonderful couple. They're my wonderful friends, and they throw a great party. It's really fun. I can almost, like Sgt. Pepper, a splendid time is guaranteed for all. I can guarantee you, if you're a Beatles fan, you'll have a good time at this. It's almost impossible not to have a good time. Everybody's wonderful. We're all friends. It's a big love-in. We all just profess our love to the Beatles.
If you're a Beatles fan, this is where you want to be the weekend of August 8th through the 10th. Find out more information at thefest.com. And don't forget, you will get to meet and see and have a question and answer session with Mr. Eddie Deezen himself. Eddie, when the Beatles appeared on Ed Sullivan, because you were born in 1957, you were about 6 or 7 years old. How did that impact you? You were such a young kid.
I clearly, it's funny, Ricky. I remember it before the most. My clearest incident is I remember the Friday before they came to America. This is February 17th, and I clearly remember I was in the car, and this is how ignorant we were. We didn't, there was a time we didn't know the Beatles. It's like 1955. Nobody knew who Elvis was. Now they're like these gods.
Right.
I remember clearly saying, and I go, one of them's named George Harrison. I remember that line, which is like, we didn't know their names, John, Paul, George, Ringo. My manager, Stevie, had an interesting realization. He said the Beatles were the first band where everybody knew all the members. It was always like Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas, Jay and the Americans,
sure,
Mick Jagger and the Stones. But the Beatles, everybody knew John, Paul, George, Ringo. It came all right away.
And everyone had their favorites.
We caught on it. It was the Beatles, but we knew them all individually. And we got, A Hard Day's Night came out, and we got to know them, those individual personalities, their caricatures, which kind of persist to this day. We kind of look at them that way. John, the witty one, the leader, the wise guy, the smart ass, and the intellectual one. Paul, the cute one, the one the girls like, the romantic one. George, kind of the mystical spirit and the quiet one. And Ringo was kind of the, not in the derogatory, kind of the dopey, kind of the goofy one, kind of the offbeat one.
But it's not often I get to talk to someone like yourself who experienced the Beatles as they were emerging into their popularity and their fame. I mean, my discovery of the Beatles didn't really come until the late 70s. I became a Beatles fan in let's say 1980. I was 15 years old. They had already been gone for 10 years, for crying out loud. But my older sisters had all the collections and everything. And when I was a young kid, they were all in school. I would go through their record collections and steal them. And that's how I got to be such a huge fan of the Beatles. But they impacted my life so much. But you got to experience them all the way through. Now, were you as affected by them as when they first arrived on the scene as when they started their 70s stuff and in the more psychedelics?
Oh yeah, I followed them all through the 60s, but it did actually get bigger in the 70s for me. The 70s where I went way overboard and got, oh my God, this right. I mean, I followed them. I remember we went to see A Hard Day's Night. I lived in a little town in Western Maryland called Cumberland, Maryland.
Yep.
We had the Strand Theater. A Hard Day's Night played there, and then we had the Center Theater. Help played there the 2 years, 64 and 65. I was 7 and 8. And I went, and this is a little out of the way, it's just a little, I'm not going to say a hick town. It was a very, like a Petticoat Junction kind of town. And the girls screamed all the way through each movie. We went there, you could not hear. It was constant screaming for 90 minutes. And you see the Beatles move their lips. You could hear a little bit, but it was just screaming all the way through. It shows the effect they had, everywhere. They permeated everywhere, the Beatles. It was unbelievable.
And think of how lucky the teenagers in New York City were. Here they are. They're at the plaza. And you can you can get on the subway and go down and get as close to them as you possibly can at this point as they're getting ready to go into the Ed Sullivan Show.
Exactly. My wife, I was married for 2 years, and this, I think, how we got divorced. We were talking when we were married for 2 years, and you have these long conversations. Linda and I would talk and everything. And then one day I'm talking, I go, yeah, the Beatles were at Shea Stadium in 65. And she goes, oh, I was there. And I did like a double take. I go, you didn't freaking you never thought to tell me you were there. What was it like? She said, I hardly remember anything, blah, blah, blah. If she doesn't tell me that, she doesn't really know anything about me. And then we divorced shortly after that. That was kind of like the last straw.
Yeah, that's.
And by the way, we divorced on good terms. It wasn't a bad divorce. I loved her. She was very beautiful. She looked like Cher.
Wow.
And we had a good marriage for 2 years and all, but that was the last straw. She didn't think to tell me that she saw the Beatles. She doesn't really know me.
That's a big matzo ball to float out there without mentioning it, especially to someone like yourself. My God.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool that you follow them all the way through, because I know some people that only care about the Beatles' later stuff. They don't care about the early stuff, and I know vice versa. And but it's nice to talk to somebody. Everybody's
subjective, and some only will follow one. I like George, but I don't like John stuff, and blah blah blah. I don't like this, but it's very subjective. But they gave so much that you know what I mean. John, in the early days when they came in '64, he said something very insightful, and I'm paraphrasing. He goes. What was the exact quote? I'm trying to think what he said. He said something like, I didn't have this, Paul didn't have that, George didn't have this, Ringo didn't have that. But he said, but we figured everybody would be able to dig one of us.
Yeah.
And that was very insightful. That's what everybody had their favorite Beatle too, pretty much. Hardly anybody was just a generic fan. Almost everybody you'd interview, who's your favorite Beatle? And they go, well, I like Paul, he's dreamy, or I like John, because of this, or Ringo. And everybody had their favorite Beatle too. So it kind of gave whereas Elvis, you could like Elvis or you didn't like him. And that was pretty much it. You either liked him or you didn't like him.
Right.
The Beatles, you could kind of hook on to one of them and get attached to them.
And it's funny, the Beatles often remarked later in years that they felt bad for Elvis because they all had each other. And Elvis just had no one. Even with the Memphis Mafia.
Exactly right.
They were just
exactly right.
Yeah.
And also, I think another difference is that I think Brian Epstein, their manager, deeply cared about the Beatles. He was a gay guy and he was in love with John. He had a huge crush on John, but he deeply cared about the Beatles. Brian was a very warm, sensitive guy, and he really cared for the Beatles. He really looked after them. Whereas the Colonel, I think, Elvis was, what I mean? I think he was more of a dollar sign to him.
Oh, 100%.
He was the boy, Yeah, he took 50%,
Oh, yeah.
And I just think Elvis was more of a banker. And reputedly, not necessarily true, but reputedly when Elvis died, the Colonel's first words were, he goes, this doesn't change anything.
Wow.
So that kind of shows where his heart was.
Yeah, I'm a huge Elvis fan as well. I've been to Graceland about 5 or 6 times. I spent my 50th birthday there.
I went to Graceland. Yes, I loved Elvis, and I mean, particularly the pre-army Elvis. I love the pre-army Elvis. Afterwards, not so much, but I've read, hundreds of books on Elvis too. He's a fascinating guy. And I never got to meet him. I would love to meet him. And I went to Graceland because of Polar Express. Tom Hanks is the biggest Elvis fan in the world.
Really?
And he said, you have to go to Graceland. Yeah, he told me about it. And interestingly, I said, what's it like? And he told me in one word. He goes, it was sad.
It was
sad. That's what I remember most.
When I was there on my 50th 10 years ago, I had walked out back to look. I was looking at the beautiful landscaping and his horses and everything. And my wife at the time was saying to me, what's the matter? And I just teared up. I didn't break down. I just said, it's so sad. He's not here to see how beautiful things are and how much people really love him. I mean, when he died in 1977, I don't think he really had any idea how beloved he was.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're probably right. And it's never stopped. It's kind of like the Beatles, never stopped growing. They're immortal in the sense that Shakespeare's immortal. That's how you have to look at these guys. They're like, these are part of history now. They're part of human history.
Now, when I was preparing for this, I dug up some what I thought were obscure Beatle facts. This isn't so much a question. This is did you know? Okay.
Sure.
So apparently,
I'll be honest.
The Beatles were approached by Disney's Jungle Book to do voices of 4 vultures. Did you know that?
Yes, that's exactly right. That is true.
Now
They had
that
different
struck
movie
me.
offers they turned down. There was one really gnarly one when they got A Hard Day's Night. Paul said they were originally offered this one, and you can look at it on IMDb, look it up, or it might even you can find it on YouTube. But there was a gnarly gang-related film, it was like a gang film in the 50s. Now it was called The Yellow Teddy Bears, and that was the first thing that when the Beatles would star in The Yellow Teddy Bears, and Brian, no, we're not going to do this. That's wrong. That was like their first offer. They weren't going to put him in this gritty drama thing, which would never fit, but.
Yeah, I guess these were 4 very sullen characters, these vultures, and that's why they decided not to do it. But it's funny.
They had some interesting offers, and it's too bad because I loved them in movies. Hard Day's Night is my favorite movie of all time, and then Help was a little lesser of a movie. They were stoned. They discovered marijuana, and they were stoned in Help, and you'll see they'll say some weird non sequitur things that don't make sense. Whereas Hard Day's Night is the most perfect cogent film. Every joke works. Every scene plays. It's almost like a perfect film, like Jaws. It's just perfect.
Absolutely.
And then Help, the music is great, of course. The visuals are great. The color's beautiful. But you just hear them. They'll say stupid things. And that's because they were stoned. They weren't really coherent. So it didn't work. And they got this abuse. I don't know if the reviews of Help, Hard Day's Night was pretty unanimously loved. Help was more mixed reviews.
Well, no,
they just stopped wanting to make movies after that.
Someone like yourself, did you agree with the comparison they made of the Beatles to the Marx Brothers?
I could see that, yes. And Hard Day's Night, I could definitely see it, yeah. And even to an extent, Help, but yeah, definitely they were a great comedy team. They had 4 clear characters, and yeah, I could definitely see that.
It was definitely one of my favorite movies of all time when I was a youngster. Like I said, when I'm discovering this stuff, you couldn't just go and stream A Hard Day's Night, and VCRs were just really not even coming around for another couple of years. We had to wait till I remember the drive-in, our local drive-in was playing the Buddy Holly story and A Hard Day's Night. And me and my buddies all crowded into my friend's station wagon, and we went to see. Of course, they had to start with the Buddy Holly story, but we liked that just as much. And then we watched all of Hard Day's Night. And we just had a riot because at that time you couldn't just dial the movie up; you had to wait till it came around in some format.
Yes, that's the way it was when I was a kid. We're so spoiled nowadays. Any movie you want, you can pretty much push a button or pay a few bucks, and you pretty much have access. With very, very few exceptions. When I was a kid growing up in the '60s, you want to see a movie, you had to wait for it to come on TV. That was it.
Yeah.
You see a great movie, it stops to see it run, Goldfinger or whatever movie you love, and you have to wait till Goldfinger comes on TV. You might wait a year to see it. That was just the way things were.
Yeah.
Now, you get anything anywhere. We have access to everything.
It was almost a little better, I think, sometimes, not to have these instant gratification, the anticipation.
Very interesting. You're right. Maybe so.
So just to jump ahead now, I want to hold your hand. As I mentioned before, this is one of my all-time favorite comedies. You don't even appear in this movie till 32. I timed it, Eddie. 32 minutes and 55 seconds. TC, just to let you know, Eddie bursts onto the screen, and this movie kicks into high gear. I mean, it was good.
Oh, thank you.
But once Eddie Deezen shows up, the movie goes into the stratosphere.
And the director was my favorite. Bob Zemeckis is my favorite director. Yes, better than Spielberg. And I love, what can you say about Steven Spielberg? What's it like working for Spielberg? Well, it's like being in a chauffeur-driven Rolls Royce. That's Steven Spielberg. It's the best. He's obviously the greatest director ever. But Bob was better for me because he had more of my kind of comedy. Steven is not necessarily a comedy director. Steven will do films, and there's always comedy in them.
Right.
Like we were watching Jaws the other day, and there's funny, the crushing the beer can, crushing the paper cup. We'll have comedy moments, whereas Bob can carry a comedy all the way through more. If comedy's more of his thing. Steven's not necessarily a comedy director. 1941, the film I did with him, was his only real comedy movie. And, we was kind of, the critics didn't like it, and we barely made money, but it wasn't one of his bigger successes.
And I was watching an interview with the beautiful Nancy Allen and Mark McClure recently, and they both remarked that they made Zemeckis laugh, and they said when you make Bob Zemeckis laugh, you know you got something.
Yes,
they said
he's a wonderful man, and he remembered me. He wrote me into Polar Express. My character, Know-It-All, is not in the Polar Express book. The Polar Express kids book. The character doesn't exist. Bob made up the character for me because he wanted me in the movie, and he wrote me up the character, and I got to be in Polar Express with him. So I got to do 2 films with him, and he wrote 1941, so it's kind of 3. But he's the best. For me, he's my favorite. He's like a father, brother, everything to me.
Well, you could tell you had a good time on that. Now, I sent you some pictures last night. Were you surprised to see those?
Yes, I love those. Yes. That was from when we did the promotional tour. I Want to Hold Your Hand was the first film Steven Spielberg ever produced. That was his first one, and was Bob's directorial debut. So we went on tour and we stayed in the Beatles suite. We went on, did the promotional tour in New York. We stayed in the suite in the plaza where the Beatles stayed. Is that cool or what? So
yeah,
we stayed there. Steven was there. Bob was there. We had a lot of fun moments. You know, one story I've never told, which I debate whether I should tell it, but I wonder whether I should. But anyway, we had a lot of great times there in New York, and it was just a wonderful, joyous time. You know, we were all young. And it was great. And sadly, I Wanna Hold Your Hand didn't do that good at the box office. The critics liked it, but it kind of flopped at the box office, so it kind of broke our hearts. But it's a film we're all proud of now, and it's definitely a cult film now. Now, they asked Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney was talking about it once. This is my true Beatles experience. He was talking about it once, and my friend Joe Pope was his name. He had a Beatles magazine called Strawberry Fields Forever. Sadly, Joe died of AIDS later on, but he was a great guy. It was this like the 80s or 90s. And he interviewed Paul. He goes, Paul, did you ever see a movie called I Want to Hold Your Hand? And Paul McCartney goes, and the answer come back. And the answer back. He did an imitation of me. So McCartney did me, which is the coolest. So
that is awesome. My God.
Yes. And then the other one is George Harrison was asked. George Harrison was asked, do you like any of the Beatles-related movies? And George Harrison, I swear to God, the guy told me that he said, George Harrison said, I like the Ringo Klaus movie. So George saw I Want to Hold Your Hand, and he liked that movie. So those two things really made me. I never found out if John ever saw it. I don't know. Now, I would assume he did. John lived in New York, you know, and he didn't pass away. The horrible tragedy didn't happen until 1980. So I'm assuming John saw it, but I never heard, you know, whether he saw it, how he viewed it. The only one that would know is Yoko, and she probably doesn't even remember now.
Yeah, probably not. But I'm sure if he saw it, he would have absolutely loved it. You know, Zemeckis said one of the greatest memories of his life is going to the preview of I Want to Hold Your Hand. And he said he didn't know what to expect, but the audience just went wild. They were laughing and cheering. And it was just great.
It was wonderful.
Because it really is a very underappreciated film, and I don't understand. And I tell everybody to watch this film.
We've tried to figure it out for years because it is a great film. Everybody I know pretty much liked it that saw it. And it was, you know, it was Spielberg, it was Zemeckis, great talents. I don't know, there was no star names in it. I've heard that theory. Oh, there was no stars, never been a star. Carrie Fisher was originally supposed to be in it, but she dropped out early. But who knows, if Carrie Fisher had been in it, maybe he would have done better. But we were pretty much 7 unknown people. Nancy Allen was the only one. She had done Carrie. She had kind of a name. But none of us were really known. So, and Bob, you know, was an unknown director then. Who knows?
And she was, Nancy Allen had said that she was getting all these offers that were very similar to her character in Carrie. And when she saw this, she said, this is actually me. This is how I would have behaved in that scene, in real life if I was this girl.
Right. Interesting.
Well, you know, this film came out in 1978. It is a big favorite of ours down here at the studio, as I told you.
Thank you.
And, you know, a couple of the things that I noticed in there. Well, for one thing, Murray the K portrayed himself, which surprised me, and I didn't even think I realized that till last night when I was rewatching it.
That was Murray the K. Yes, I remember him in wardrobe in makeup, talking to him. And I remember talking. He's kind of a little out of it at that time. He was probably real old at that time.
And even in real life, back in the day, I think he fancied himself a little more friendlier with the Beatles than he actually was, to be honest with you.
Maybe so, yeah.
But I mean, in addition to yourself, we had the lovely Nancy Allen, Bobby DeCicco, Mark McClure, TC. He went on to play Jimmy Olsen in the Superman movie.
And he played Marty McFly's brother Dave in Back to the Future.
2 of your most favorite movies.
Right.
Well, Zemeckis really has his favorites, huh? My God. Susan Kendall Newman and Teresa Saldana, who really was just incredible in that role.
They were both wonderful. Teresa, you know, she had that horrible tragedy, but hopefully she's back from it. I think she passed away, I'm sorry.
But yeah, she did. Then 2016, I think we lost her.
2016, yeah. She was a very nice lady. And Nancy, and I'm sorry, Susan Kendall Newman, is that her only film? I never heard of her in any other film.
I was looking it up, and I think that might have been it, Eddie. I really do. I think that was.
I guess she did it, and you know, and we're sure one thing. One thing, sir. Paul Newman saw the movie, so I wonder if he liked it or not. Wow! Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward saw the movie. So,
well, they got good senses of humor. I could see them enjoying it, but I'll tell you, here's the thing that I just think is the biggest crime in Hollywood. Why weren't you and Wendy Jo Sperber put together in a string of films after following this? Because the chemistry you two had, it was unlike anything I had ever seen.
Yes, she was the best partner I ever had, the best female partner I ever had. best comedy partner I ever had. I loved her. She was like a kind of a female Lou Costello. She was a brilliant, wonderful slapstick comedian.
How did this get by the obvious?
Sadly.
The Suits of Hollywood.
We could have been paired up again. Who knows? If I Want to Hold Your Hand had been a hit, maybe they would have done it. Who knows? We were both in 1941, but we were separate. I was with Murray Hamilton, from Jaws, and Wendy Jo was with Treat Williams dancing. So who knows?
To this day, I always credit you with teaching me that objects fall at a rate of 32 feet per second.
Yes, okay.
I never knew that until I saw that movie.
Okay.
I didn't pay attention in school, but I paid attention when Eddie Deezen was talking.
Right, yes.
Now, Wendy Jo, at one point, you guys were in your suite in the movie, and she slammed you against the wall so hard, I swear, it knocked the wind out of you. Do you remember that at all?
Yes, my glasses came up. I remember my glasses. No, that wasn't planned. But, I remember it was a flimsy wall, though. It was not like a hard wall like cement or concrete. It was a very flimsy prop wall. So when she hit me, it was like hitting paper, cardboard, so it didn't hurt. But she hit me hard, and the glasses fell off. That was not planned.
You could just see it. I said, my God.
The policeman was wonderful. What was his name? That policeman was a wonderful guy. He's done a million movies.
Yes,
he's the one that carried me out of the room.
He was the one. He delivered the line. He grabs the two and he says, "Now I got you little shitheads," and you say, "Who you calling little?"
Yes, that was my line. Okay, when we were filming One Horror Hand, I swear to God, this is true. Steven Spielberg and I would walk up and down the hallways together. We'd kibitz and chat, and I would just chat with Spielberg. And we're talking, and I go, "Hey, Steven," I get this joke. I go, "When he gets me, why don't you have him say to me, 'Hey, you little shit?'" And I go, "Who you calling little?" And Steven laughed. And we went into Bob Zemeckis, and Steven said, "Hey, Bob, Eddie's got this great joke." And then I think that was the first time that joke was used. You've seen it in a lot of variations. They'll say it, and they'll get the adjective is the derogatory thing, and they'll get mad at the other part of the line.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the first time that joke. They'll go like, "All right, now I've got you big asshole," and then they go, "Who you calling big?"
Who you calling big?
In other words, they're mad at the wrong thing, not mad at the real derogatory thing. And I think that was the first time that kind of joke was used. But
I'm telling you,
a lot of variations over the years.
It had me rolling last night. I remember. I was watching it for the first time. It was hilarious. Now, there's a couple of things that did appear in the movie that little nods to the Beatles, and I'm sure you know about them. I'm going to bring them up anyway.
Sure.
When the old rich lady was in the elevator and she was remarking about the behavior of the children, she said everyone's acting all helter skelter.
Right.
And the gentleman who hired the escort, when Grace, who was Teresa Saldana, came up to his room, do you remember his room number?
No, I don't.
909.
Oh, okay. There you go. Very good. Okay, let me tell you something. I don't remember that in 50 years. I don't remember anybody ever catching that. That's
wow.
a little thing, but
Ricky Bittman caught this for Eddie Deezen.
There you go. You got me on that one.
Now, did you also know, and this was pointed out last night, I have to give some credit to Nancy Allen and Mark McClure because they pointed this out in this little interview they did that was part of the Criterion Collection copy of I Want to Hold Your Hand.
I wish I would have given anything to have been part of it. I think maybe I was in the hospital at that time. I had so much hospital stays since 2020.
Yeah, it was around that time. It was around that time when they did it.
That I could, because I have so many great stories from that movie.
But they had remarked that. My God, I just lost my. Well, but I was telling everybody, if you don't have a copy of the Criterion Collection of I Want to Hold Your Hand, Barnes and Nobles in the month of July. There's a couple of days left. You can get this at 50% off. Go to your Barnes and Noble's website, and you can get a great classic movie like I Want to Hold Your Hand and add it to your collection and see the great Eddie Deezen in action.
Very good. Yes. In fact, bring it to Beatles Fest. I'll autograph it for you. I'll sign it for you.
Oh, excellent. All right.
Yeah.
And, the last little tidbit I dug up from that interview, though. Now, the four girls in the movie, you had Rosie, you had Pam, you had Janice and Grace.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Did you recognize the first letter of each of their names?
Yes, that I've heard. You got a sharp mind though. You know your Beatles. That I knew. They deliberately put JPGR. Yes.
Isn't that something?
That was deliberate. Yes.
That's great stuff.
That's a good catch by you though. That's very good catch.
Well, like I said, this is a love letter to. Here's the thing. A lot of people say, well, this isn't the Beatles aren't in it, so why would I want to watch it? This movie is a love letter to Beatles fans. That's what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. Was it the first Beatles tribute film? Was there ever one before that?
I don't recall one, and I think I had mentioned
maybe it was the first.
I mentioned to you in a text. My sister and I were watching. I was very young at the time, in my early teens, and this movie had come on. It was on a Saturday afternoon. I believe it was before cable. I still think we had the local network affiliates would run movies in the afternoons, at 4:00, and this was on there. And like I said, when you came onto the screen, my sister and I perked up immediately, and this movie just got 1,000 times better. And right early in your appearance, you said the line that I still say to this day: "I can't get in that elevator. It's not lined up properly." and she just whips
Yes,
you.
right.
Still one of my favorite quotable lines from all movie. I probably quote
Thank you
that.
so much. By the way, you bring up a point, Rick, which I want to bring that just came back to my memory, and this is what I've heard. This is what I've heard from a couple other people, and I believe it's true. We were talking about the popularity of the Beatles, and this is kind of a sad story, but I think it's true. The Beatles, of course, we know, split up in 69, 70, those years. And they were, the biggest rock act of all time. We all know that. But it kind of went down a little. We figured the Beatles are gone and would just go on. And life went on. And the Beatles were popular. They were really big and popular. But where they really went through the roof, where they are now, where they're the biggest thing in pop culture. I think they're bigger than Marilyn Monroe or Elvis. They're up at least on the level of Marilyn Monroe, Elvis.
Oh.
The Beatles are as big as you get. But they really started, from what I've heard from people, they go, after the tragedy with John Lennon. After John got it in 1980, the sad thing happened. They go, that's when the interest really went through the roof. All the books started coming out. And all this.
And I had just started learning about them.
Sad, but I think that's kind of true.
Yeah, I was in the bathroom in the morning getting ready to go to school. I was washing my face. We'll just say I was washing my face. And my sister knocked on the door. She said, "You have the radio on in there?" And I said, "No." She goes, "Well, you better turn it on." And that's how I got the news. And again, the Beatles were new to me at that point, and now. He's gone. It was awful.
Yeah.
Have you ever visited the? I'm sorry.
There was a big. That's okay. There was the big thing I heard it on, and a lot of people heard it on, was it would happen on Monday Night Football.
Monday Night Football,
Cosell, who was like the biggest sports announcer of all time. He goes, "This is Howard Cosell." He goes, something transcended sports today. And he, John Lennon, the leader of the Beatles, and he talked about it. And that's how millions of us heard the news. I think my wife and I were out to dinner. And we actually did hear it there. We heard John Lennon was shot. You couldn't believe it. It's like, it couldn't be true. Yeah. And then I went home and I saw it on Monday Night Football, and that's when it really, oh my God, this really happened.
Did you ever?
It's something you couldn't have envisioned something like that. No. It's too weird. It's too bizarre.
Did you ever visit the Dakota?
No, I never did. No.
I'm going to tell you right now, from one Beatle fan to another, I went there on a trip to New York with my wife, and we stood outside there, and she said, "Why don't you stand there? I'll get your picture." I said, "Absolutely not." And I said, "I think we need to leave." She goes, "Why?" I just had this overwhelming feeling of dread standing in that doorway. That's interesting. It really was. It was otherworldly. It was, and I'm not saying I was visited by John Lennon. I'm just saying it just was an overwhelming sense of heaviness and sadness, and we just left it.
It's very sad, but I don't discount that. You probably were perceiving something real.
Yeah. And we walked across the street to Strawberry Fields, where they have the Imagine tribute, and it was much better. It was much more peaceful. So, if you're ever up there, I would avoid it. And I also came across another fun fact. Mark McClure, who played Larry Du Bois, he actually saw the Beatles live at the Hollywood Bowl.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah, he remarked that. It must have been either 64 or 65. They played there in both years, but that's kind of cool.
That's great trivia. Yeah, that I never knew. That's another one you got me. I never knew that one. That's good trivia. I never, I saw him separately. I never got to meet John. John was always my favorite. From the early days, John was always my favorite Beatle. He's always been for 60 years. But I did a show called Punky Brewster in 1984. Yep. And one of the guys, and it was a mediocre show, it was a kiddie show, but I did like 8 episodes. And the guy on the show was named George Gaines. He was like he was Inspector Lazard in the Police Academy movies. Really nice guy. "Eddie, how are you?" Eddie had this distinguished voice. Goes, and one day I come on the set, "Eddie, I hear you're a Beatles fan." "Yes." He goes, "Paul McCartney is going to be on the Tonight Show tonight. I got your ticket." So he gives me 2 tickets. And this sweet guy, nicest present I ever got, but he gives me 2 tickets. I got in. I saw Paul McCartney that night. So I saw Paul McCartney. I went with a friend. I think my friend Johnny. We went to see him there. We watched Paul, and of course we went crazy and the show ended. So we all ran outside. Maybe we can get a glimpse of McCartney. So we all ran out. It was like a hard day's night. There were like 100 or 200 of us Beatle fans run out. Paul, of course, is very experienced. We see this little sports car. I'm sure Paul just rented his car. Now, the only thing I don't remember for certain is I remember clearly seeing Paul there. But I don't remember for certain. I think Linda might have been in the passenger seat, but I might be dubbing that in. But anyway, Paul was there. We all engulfed his car. Wow. He rolled down Paul's been through this thousands of times. He knew what to. He rolled down the window, put his arm out, and I broke through the crowd. I touched him on the shoulder. So I touched the Beatle. I touched Paul.
Wow.
And then he sat there for a few seconds. He let us all, he might even said hi or whatever. He started pulling the crowd gingerly, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, I felt a weight on my foot, like an elephant smashed my foot. It was like a ton thing, this smashing weight. It's a miracle didn't break my foot. I think he drove his car over my foot. It was a little sports car, a little light sports car, and I think Paul drove his car over my foot, and I can still feel it on my foot. But I think he drove over my foot, and that was my encounter with Paul McCartney. That's when I touched the Beatle, and I saw him in concert, and Paul puts on the greatest shows ever. I saw him in concert; he was great. And Yeah, and that's it. I've seen Ringo in concert, and I saw, this is my George Harrison story.
Mm-hmm.
I was playing Santa Claus at the Beverly Center. Beverly Center is a shopping center in L.A., and I was playing Santa Claus. We were sitting there at the Beverly Center, it's true. One of my things on my bucket list is I'm Jewish, but I always love Christmas.
Sure.
And I always wanted to play Santa Claus, always fancy. So I swear to God, the guy that runs the shopping center goes, our Santa Claus didn't show up today. Does anybody in this crowd want to play Santa Claus? So I jumped through my skin. I'm waving my arm, me. So he picked me. They put, I weighed like 120 pounds. They patted me with a pillow. They put me in a Santa Claus suit, and I had a joyous day playing Santa Claus. But they go, Eddie, you can have a 15-minute break. So, it was hot. So I took my, the top off, and I took the pillow out, and I have a T-shirt. I had my Santa Claus pants and my black boots on. But I had a T-shirt on. I must look like an idiot. I took my beard off, but I had a Santa Claus red pants. Who comes out of the bookstore? Barnes & Noble, I think it was, or Pickwick Books. George Harrison walks out with a bodyguard on each side. It's three of them. George Harrison, these two burly bodyguards. So George walks out. Nobody recognized him. I was the only one. He's talking, and he walks down the hall slowly. They're just talking. And I walked parallel to him, and I was jumping up and down, bobbing. There's no film of this, but it really happened. And they're walking there. And to this day, I regret not saying, hi, George. I think maybe, it was kind of after John got shot, so I didn't want to scare him.
Sure.
But I should have just said, hi, George. And I'm sure George would have waved and said hi. He's a nice guy. But I just followed him parallel, and he went out the door. And that was my thing with George Harrison. I saw him, but I never talked to him. And I was the only one that recognized he was George Harrison.
That's incredible. I mean, I don't think I've met anyone who's ever said they've seen them and that close to George Harrison. That's remarkable. Well, you've certainly led a charm.
He had a book, and I always wondered what his book. He bought a book in the bookstore, and I always wondered what was that book in his bag. We'll never know, but he did buy a book in that bookstore. I remember.
I'm a huge fan of Monty Python, and it was I think it was Michael Palin or John Cleese told a great story about. Do you remember when George Harrison was attacked in his home? He was stabbed. Multiple times, and he had just hired a new assistant. I think it was a young girl. And as the first responders came and they bundled him all up and they're taking him down the stairs in the stretcher, he still maintained that sense of humor. He looked at the young girl, he recognized her as being the one that just started working for him, and he said, "Are you still happy you took the job?"
Very sweet. That's so sweet. Yeah. That's the thing about them. They all four of them were very funny guys. They had this great sense of humor, and that was part of their charm. Elvis, was kind of funny, but he didn't have the wit the Beatles had. Elvis would kind of say something maybe funny, but they were all four had sharp wits, all four of them, especially John. I think all very funny guys.
I think Elvis was much more sensitive to the plight of the fans, though. He would always remark, "Listen, they're just trying to get a little piece of me. That we have to put on our best show for them and everything." He had tremendous amount of patience with the fans, but I mean, his fans didn't react the way. I mean, his fans went crazy for him, but nothing the way the Beatles got. I mean, my God, they were trying to tear them limb from limb.
Right, exactly.
Well, this has been awesome talking about the Beatles. Hey, in addition, I just want to let everybody know, follow Eddie Deezen on Facebook, because in addition to his voluminous knowledge of the Beatles, he is a wonderful presence out there on social media, and he will definitely make you laugh and he will uplift your spirit. Last night, he remarked a meme last night, TC, you'll get a kick out of this. He says, "Last night I watched an excellent documentary on bondage and discipline. I especially enjoyed the gag reel."
Yes, that was my joke. I'm guilty. That was my joke. Yes.
I'm telling you, they come out of. I said, Eddie, I'm amazed at what you can conjure up, and then a couple hours later, you'll get something like, "Your piece is more important than anyone's judgment to you." And it's just, they all make you stop and think. A while ago, Eddie, I had actually sent you a link. We actually did a game here on the podcast one night where I had picked a bunch of Eddie Deezen memes from Facebook, and I matched them up against Mother Teresa quotes, and we played a game. Who said it, Eddie Deezen or Mother Teresa?
That's an interesting one. Okay.
I'll have to resend that to you. When you get some spare time, you can listen to it.
That's an interesting one.
It was funny because I don't think anybody scored a point that night. It was just, they were so close. But I wanted to, if you don't mind, I got a couple of questions from some of our listeners. Is that okay?
Of course. Sure.
Okay. Doug Palumbo, who you may have spoken to, he had a question. He said, "Eddie, you've worked in live action and done voice work. Do you have a preference for one over the other, and why?"
Well, okay, it's kind of a mixed answer. I like doing movies the best. Movies is my favorite, but I like the non-pressure of voiceovers because I always had a hard time memorizing lines since back to War Games. Now I'll tell you my War Games story real quick. I had the scene in War Games. I don't know if you saw War Games.
Absolutely.
I was the first. Yeah, I was the first computer nerd. That scene, that was the first computer nerd. That was the character, Mr. Potato Head. But I kept screwing up my line, Ricky. They give me my line, and I go, "It's a new data encryption algorithm." I can say it now. Okay, I've been saying it for 40 years. When I did the scene, when we filmed it, I could not get that line straight. And I go, "It's new data endocrine algorithm." Cut. It's new data endocrine algorithm. Cut. I screwed up and screwed up and screwed up. So now here's a little bit of trivia. Everybody thinks War Games was directed by John Badham, and it was. John Badham was the War Games director. And I often get asked, Eddie, what was it like to work with John Badham? I never worked with John Badham. My director for War Games, the original director, was Marty Brest. Marty Brest, who later did Beverly Hills Cop. And he has some good projects too. But Marty Brest did War Games. He directed for 12 days, and they fired him. They didn't like his dailies, and I was in those dailies. They did our scene. They fired him. John Badham came on, and John Badham only kept one scene in those days, and that was my scene. So my scene of War Games is the only scene of War Games that isn't directed by John Badham.
Wow.
But anyway, when I did the film, Ricky, I kept screwing up the line. So Marty Badham crooks his finger. He goes, Eddie, come here. He goes, we're going to go for a little walk. He sounds kind of ominous. He puts his arm around my shoulder. He goes, we go outside. He goes, look. He goes, he's talking to me like a gangster. He goes, you're costing the studio money. He goes, we're going to get you these things called idiot cards. And he said idiot like that. He goes, we're going to get you these things called idiot cards. They're cue cards, but he said idiot cards.
Yeah, that hit
And
hard.
he got him. Anyway, he wrote my lines down, and he wrote data encryption algorithm. And guess what, Ricky? I did it one take. It was
there
bang.
You go. Well,
It's a new data encryption algorithm. I did it. We nailed it. It was done in 1 minute. So I realized these things are great, cue cards. And then I started doing voiceovers like 1990, and I realized you just get to read it, Mandark, all right, Dexter, I'm going to take over this laboratory and all the beautiful Dee Dee, and I would just read it. Whereas a movie, it's another talent. You have to memorize lines and act.
yeah, physical
And
presence.
In the young days, but yeah, it got worse and worse for me. In the early days, like I want to hold your hand, I have a lot of dialogue. But I would go in the bathroom and I'd lock myself in the room, and I would just rehearse my lines over and over and over, and I could retain lines. But as I got older, it got harder and harder.
Yeah, no,
I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying I know what you mean. As you get older, we start losing things.
Exactly. You lose that ability. When I did Polar Express, Bob Zemeckis hired me, I did it. And I said, Bob, please, can I have cue cards? And he was very generous. He goes, yeah, we'll get you cue cards. That's fine. So I did cue cards. Now, we did the whole movie. I worked for 11 weeks. The last day of Polar Express, I'm saying goodbye. So Tom Hanks, this is what he does. He goes, what the fuck are you doing with cue cards? What do you have a goddamn cue? He goes, what are you friggin'? He literally goes, what are you fucking Marlon Brando? Now he was kind of tongue in cheek. He's not a mean guy, but I talked to my friend Freddie. He goes, he was probably a little bit frustrated, but he never said a word.
Yeah.
For the 11 weeks, he wanted me to give him. He's a total pro, and he didn't want to upset me. But the last day, he kind of said, "Why do you need that?" And I said to Freddie, it was so second nature for him. He's a Shakespearean trained actor.
Sure.
So for him, he can remember. If you can do Shakespeare, you can do anything. But he could remember everything. But for me, it was hard to remember the little lines. And I guess Tom couldn't comprehend an actor needing cue cards. It was beyond him. It's kind of like Babe Ruth. Saying, "Well, why didn't you just get a hit there?" Why didn't you just hit the ball?
Not as easy as it says.
So it's easy for you, but we can't all do that.
And one more question for you. Another Facebook listener, our friend Jeff Collins asked, how did you not get cast in Revenge of the Nerds?
Okay, that's a true story. Now, everybody asked me that, and interestingly, I met Robert Carradine at a show less than a year ago. I finally did a show with him, and he's there signing. That does look like me, because I've been mistaken for him so many times. My old friend Pee Wee Herman, I've been mistaken for him a million times.
Sure.
You're Pee Wee, you're Robert Carradine, you're the guy in Revenge of the Nerds, but that was not me. And I went up to Robert. I said, Robert, I've been mistaken for you 100 times. You get mistaken for me. He goes, all the time. He was a very nice guy, but I finally met him. But anyway, I did a movie called The Whoopee Boys. I don't know if you ever saw it. It's a B movie. Paul Rodriguez. That's, yeah. Yep. Yes. It's a funny movie. It's pretty raunchy. Marshall Warfield was in it.
Yep.
But it was a funny movie, and it was a B movie we did. And
wasn't the kid from Caddyshack was in that?
Yes, Mike O'Keefe.
Yes. Okay, go ahead. I'm
Mike
sorry.
O'Keefe was in it. Sweet guy, totally nice guy. Yep. Paul Rodriguez was a very funny guy. Paul would kind of cut me down on the set. He was a little bit rough on me, but every weekend, hey, Deezen, it's Rodriguez. He called him up. You want to get something to eat? We go out to eat. Every weekend we had the same thing. Chili and pancakes. We'd always have chili and pancakes. It was kind of a good, it sounds like a bad mix, but we have it for lunch every weekend. Paulie and I have it together. But anyway, to answer your question, Adam Field was the producer of The Whoopee Boys. He produced The Revenge of the Nerds. And I go, Adam, you got to tell me, why was I not put in Revenge of the Nerds? And this is what he told me. Whether he was trying to placate me or not, this is what he told me. He said the joke of Revenge of the Nerds is we wanted to get regular guys and make them look like nerds. Dress them up like nerds. He said, you already look like that. He goes, so you wouldn't have fit in the movie. That's what he told me.
Well,
so
that makes
sense. Where he
sense.
always told me. Because everybody asked me that question.
Isn't that something? And the last from our fans out there, Joe Quick Quinn, he follows you on Facebook. He's been sending you requests to follow his band. I promised him I would do this for you. He sends you requests to follow TBGB. And you know what that stands for?
No.
That stands for That's Ben Gardner's Boat. They're a band out of Boston, and they're all fans of yours, but they go by TBGB, and he's been sending you follow requests. So if you got some time, indulge him and follow him, and you'll hear some great music. They post their live.
Are they on YouTube or what?
They're on Facebook right now. But
it's the letters TBGB?
Yep, TBGB, and follow them.
Please tell him I will give him a listen.
Okay.
I will definitely give him a listen.
It's Joe Quick Quinn and all the boys on That's Ben Gardner's Boat. And
Joe Quick Quinn. Gotcha. Tell Joe thank you, and I will give him a listen.
I definitely will. And, if as we round it up here, I want to say again, Eddie, thank you. But I want to remind all the fans out there, don't forget the Fest for Beatle fans 2025 Chicago Fest is August 8th through the 10th. It's the original and longest-running Beatles convention since 1974, and it's at the Hyatt Regency O'Hare in Rosemont, Illinois. Look them up at thefest.com and go out there and say hi and meet Eddie Deezen. I'm going to do everything I can to get out there. And
thank you, Ricky.
And if you listen,
I look forward to seeing you. I hope I see you.
And this is
I look forward to seeing everybody there.
This is an honest invitation. If you're ever doing a local con, and I'll remind you if I see it posted up here in the New England or the Boston area, we'd like to take you out as our guest to the local. It's the mecca of Chinese food here in New England. It's called the Kowloon Restaurant. And you would absolutely love it, and you would be our guest. We'll treat you to dinner, and like I said, we're not crazy. We won't paw you to death. We'll speak to you like a human being, like the girls outside the Beatles Hotel used to say. But it would be our honor. So if you're ever coming up this way, I'll extend that invitation to you.
Thank you, Ricky. I appreciate it.
And this was a pleasure, Eddie, and I can't thank you enough for your time. And I hope you enjoyed yourself.
It was my pleasure. I did thoroughly enjoy myself. It was great to meet you. And thank you for everything. And I wish you continued success with your show.
I'm speechless, Ricky Bittman. I mean, that was an unbelievable interview.
I'm worn out.
I mean, I was here when you recorded it live earlier today, and we just re-listened to it again for this podcast. I may retire and just hand over the microphone to you.
No. You do this stuff off the top of your head. You see my voluminous notes here. I don't
even know what that word means, but yes, you have a lot of notes over there.
I do. I did a lot of homework on this. I wanted to be on my game for Eddie Deezen. I wanted to honor him. There's a celebrity he is. So
I think you were the most research interviewer that guy has ever had.
Wow. Well, that would have to be Frank Santopadre and Gilbert Gottfried, I would have to say.
All right, well,
I think I'm right up there with Frank Santopadre on this one, though.
I think you are.
I did my homework.
On par with them.
Yeah, thank you.
That's what they say. No, Eddie's a fantastic guy. I've met him a million times at Comic-Cons across this great land, and he's always a gentleman.
Yep.
He's a true entertainer. He loves his fans, and it's obviously he's very passionate about the Beatles.
Yeah, and I got to get down there. I got to make the trek.
You got to make the trek, and the closest he comes to the New England area is usually New Jersey.
Oh, please, Eddie, come to Boston soon.
Well, as you said on the interview, if he ever does come to town, we will take him to the Kowloon.
We're going to take him to the Kowloon, and we're going to have a feast.
And if Eddie's listening to this after his interview, the Kowloon was actually a Jeopardy question.
Oh, that's right.
That's right. I think it's one of the most famous Chinese food restaurants on the planet.
Yeah, Eddie, if you're listening, this is no takeout joint. This is the mecca of Asian dining in New England.
Every celebrity that ever comes to New England, their pictures are on the wall.
Jerry Seinfeld's picture's even on that wall, TC.
Jerry Seinfeld, James Gandolfini, every wrestler on the planet that ever comes to town, musician goes there. This is, like you said, the mecca of Chinese food.
And they would be honored to have Eddie as
They would take his picture and put it on the wall.
Bring an 8x10, Eddie. You're going to have to be hanging it up at the Kowloon.
That is unbelievable. Well, this was a fascinating episode, and
I'm thrilled.
I really hope the fans out there appreciate the talent that Eddie Deezen has given us for 5 decades.
5 decades in entertainment, and he's underrated, but you know what? His body of work just brings so much joy to so many people. Look on Facebook, over 19,000 followers. I mean, he does all right.
The man's an icon.
He is.
I mean, everybody, you may not know the name, but when you show his picture or his voice, they go, I I know that guy.
I know that guy.
Oh, I
That's
love
Eugene.
that guy. You know, he was awesome in War Games. He was awesome in the voice in the Polar Express, and he wasn't even actually going to be in the Polar Express until Bob Zemeckis put him in the movie.
That's how
iconic he is.
I mean, that's how much of a stand-up guy Zemeckis is, and that's how talented Eddie Deezen is.
Well, you got to remember, I mean, Zemeckis in the back of my mind probably has to thank Eddie because he brought him to the dance in his first movie. He wouldn't have had his career without that first movie.
That's true. That's true.
So it was awesome. That interview was awesome. I hope we have him up here live and in person, and I hope you get to bring in some more of your favorite people to interview because when you do the research, I become a fan.
Well, you said to me we want to start doing things and getting more guests in here, and we're going to do that. And I have to thank. You know what? I forgot. Please forgive me. The producer of this segment, ladies and gentlemen, was none other than Doug Palumbo.
Doug Palumbo, our number one fan in New Jersey.
He made this happen. Doug and I talked this afternoon. I explained to him how valuable he is, and I if it's okay with you,
go right ahead.
I deemed him one of the executive producers of After Hours.
No question about it.
He said, I mean, he told me a great story. He saw John Turturro on a train one day.
Really?
Yeah, and he saw in person. He saw Stan Lee. That's another story. I'll let Doug tell you that story sometimes. A fascinating story about the time he saw Stan Lee.
Maybe we get Doug up here. He can talk about it.
Yeah, he would love it. Well, I'll tell you what. How about in all fairness, Doug, if Deezen makes it up here, you got to come up and join us at the Kowloon.
If Deezen can join us on the phone for an hour, Doug Palumbo can join us on the phone for an hour.
But when we go to the Kowloon, Doug's got to come up and he's got to sit at the table.
But he has to realize that because he's from New Jersey, he has to pick up the tab.
Oh, okay.
That's how it works.
Doug, you better start saving. The Kowloon ain't cheap.
And we're going to bring Bull.
Oh, Doug, forget it. Might as well mortgage the house.
Because the last time I went to the Kowloon with Bull, he got 3 orders of chicken fingers.
Dear Lord.
And those are what, like $17 at the
And those aren't even the best thing on the menu for crying out loud.
No, they're not.
Jesus, leave it to him.
But thank you, Doug, out there.
Yes, Doug, 1,000 thank yous.
And I want to thank Doug for wearing the shirt at the Mets game.
The Mets game, jeez.
Right?
I mean,
you know, Doug is a silent wonder for this program.
Yeah, I got a chance to really talk to Doug today. We took some time because you know me, I'm busy, and I really owed him a phone call. So we actually sat down and we had a nice.
You were pacing back and forth before this interview.
Well, I was very nervous, and I said that to Doug. I don't have a lot of faith in myself in a lot of things, and that's one of the things. I just didn't want to embarrass myself, embarrass the show.
Well, you did not.
Embarrass
You did not embarrass anybody. You actually brought us up a notch.
Because I have heard interviews with Eddie, and you know. If you're not excited to talk to the person, why are you talking to them?
Well, I mean, some people have to do this as a radio job, and they do it. And
Sure.
You know, who are we interviewing? Some guy wrote a book I never heard of. Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
But if this is someone like you have been admiring for 5 decades.
Yeah. My sister and I have a bond over that movie. I'm telling you, I can't get in this elevator. It's not lined up properly.
There you go. I mean, it was for me as the host and creator of this program. I want to personally thank you for doing a far better interview than I would ever have done with Eddie Deezen.
Thank you. I appreciate.
I enjoyed listening to that and being part of that.
I'm not going to fumfer around. I'm going to do what Carson said. I'm going to thank you for that compliment. You know how to take a compliment. I got to learn how to. Thank you.
I do not, but I'm giving it. I can give compliments. I can't accept them.
We got to work on that. Then.
Well, you know, we have.
But I will say this: I learned a lot from you, pal.
Well, thank you very much. Okay. And Quincy, what do you think about that interview? Huh?
I think you did outstanding.
Thank you. Kiss my ass some more.
One thing you never know. Do you think Eddie Deezen's a big fan of milk?
Why not? You know, he's in all these movies, so
he can't
I
have
would
it
think.
with meat though. He's Jewish.
Huh?
He can't have it with meat though because he's Jewish.
Okay, I didn't know the rules.
What's that got to do with anything?
Because it's the kosher religion, he can't eat meat with dairy products. It's a long story. I'm
okay.
Sure.
Well, for Eddie, if you're still listening to this, our co-host Quincy Briscoe over here, we call him the milkman. Because what do you drink? Like 6 gallons of milk a week?
About
that. Yeah,
about that.
You drink more milk than the maternity ward at any local hospital.
Yeah.
Well, come on, milk does a body good.
Okay, well, you know that you're living proof of that.
That's true.
So once again, this has been an unbelievable episode. I hope Eddie enjoyed it, I know we enjoyed it, and hopefully
is the word, that you heard. I mean, he did a lot of things. You know, I guess for me, he was a Eugene. If you don't mind my asking before we wrap things up,
yeah,
can I ask you what everyone knows him as?
What is our favorite Eddie Deezen role? Is that your question?
Yeah. In other words, like what did you see? Yeah, Eddie Deezen as.
What was the first thing I ever saw Eddie Deezen in? Would probably have to be War Games.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think that he's gained his most popularity from Polar Express.
Yes.
Because it's a perennial favorite.
It's become the new Christmas story. It's on 24 hours during the Christmas season.
And he plays the annoying kid or something like that.
And as he mentioned in the interview, he grew up Jewish, but he loves Christmas and he wanted to play Santa Claus.
I find that with a lot of Jews, as a matter of fact.
Really?
And I don't mind it. I mean, like, yeah, come on, join the party.
What the hell?
I love Jewish people, for crying out loud.
Christmas time is supposed to be a fun time. It's for everybody.
Put it this
That's
way.
right.
If I can go to Reuben's Deli out in Newton back when Reuben's was open and just gorge myself on corned beef and pastrami and celery tonic and everything, then Eddie Deezen is more than welcome to celebrate Christmas and love Santa.
There you go.
Because I love the Jewish food.
Well,
Well, this has been, like I said, one more time, this has been one of our best episodes ever.
Oh, wow.
And I want to thank you. I want to thank our executive producer, Doug Palumbo.
Co-executive.
Excuse me. Yeah, I don't want Abby going crazy. Co-executive producer, Doug Palumbo, for setting up this interview. And I know he has many more in the works now.
He's beating the pavement.
And we are most appreciative that our paths cross with Doug.
And hopefully, when she hears it, Abby will approve of this, huh?
I'm sure Abby was. Well, Abby, don't forget, Abby has done a lot of local theater, and she always wanted to play the Olivia Newton-John role in Grease.
Well, there you go. So she's got an in right here.
So she's gonna be going crazy. You interviewed Eugene.
Yeah.
Well, maybe if you showed up down here, you could have listened to it. But she's not here tonight, so she can't interrupt. But Quincy, the clock on the wall is telling us we have to wrap it up.
well, thank you for watching this very awesome episode, and we hope to get more awesome celebrities in our future plans. So for the present, please drive carefully, because you are going to get caught. You'll pay the consequences if you don't. So for the present, please drive carefully, and we'll see you again soon. And remember, we never close.
And Grease is the word.
Grease is the word, is the word, is the word. A true heard.